What if the thing you've been told is the reason you're not successful yet is actually the reason you feel stuck, burned out, and questioning everything? Because somewhere along the line, we were sold this idea that more hours equals more success, more hustle equals more money, and more sacrifice equals more worth. And what I have learned is not what you should do, but what I've experienced, what I've seen in my clients, and what I've seen behind the scenes of businesses scaling is that hustle culture isn't the path to your dream life. It's the fastest way to build a business you secretly resent. I'm your host, Shayla Wey, and I'm a small business coach, leadership strategist, and somebody who truly believes that building a business should help you build a life you love, not take over the one you already have. And so in today's episode, I'm breaking down why hustle culture isn't actually hurting your business, what it's costing you that no one talks about, and what actually creates sustainable income, success, and fulfillment. Because your dream life, it doesn't come from working more. It comes from leading better. So let's jump in. Well, I want to start with this idea around things that I found about the hustle culture and where it teaches people to override their energy instead of understand it. And hustle culture, in my experience over coaching the last 2 decades, is that it creates burnout, not breakthroughs. And when you override your energy long enough, burnout isn't a possibility. It's inevitable. So from a leadership perspective, this matters because you cannot lead a business, a team, or clients effectively when you're constantly depleted. From a fulfillment perspective, you start building a life where success feels heavy instead of exciting. And from a growth perspective, burnout actually slows your progress down because your brain isn't operating as it's at its highest level. And so what I've seen is that the clients who try to outwork their problems stay stuck longer than the ones who learn to think strategically. Now, hustle culture, I've also found, keeps you in employee mode or that employee mindset. And this one is big because I've seen this in a lot of clients that I coach, is that hustle culture keeps business owners acting like employees inside their own business. And so you're busy, but you're just not effective. And you're doing everything, but not the right things. Grinding a lot, but not growing to the level that you know is possible. And so from that leadership lens, you're reacting instead of leading. And from that growth lens, you're stuck in low value tasks instead of high impact decisions. And from a fulfillment lens, you feel like you created a job and not that freedom. And so the shift happens when you stop asking, what do I need to do today? And start asking, what actually moves the business forward? Now, when you're constantly in that hustle mode, you stop thinking long term. And so what can happen is hustle culture disconnects you from your vision and you start to just sort of survive the day to day. And I've seen this where people don't fail because they lack that ambition. They fail because they lose connection to their bigger vision. And so from a leadership standpoint, vision is your responsibility. From a fulfillment standpoint, without vision, success starts to feel really empty. And from a growth standpoint, vision creates direction and direction creates momentum. And so I've seen this when clients reconnect to their why, their decisions get easier, they get clearer, they get faster, and they just feel a lot more aligned. Now, one of the biggest traps as well is that hustle culture rewards activity over results. And I want to say that again, is that hustle culture rewards activity over results. And again, it's one of the biggest traps because hustle culture celebrates being busy. But busy doesn't always equal being productive. And I just want you to take a minute to reflect on that. You know, do you feel or have you felt in the past where there's been times in your day-to-day where you felt busy, but when you get to the end of the day, you didn't actually feel like you were overly productive? And then if you think of days that maybe didn't feel busy, but you really moved the needle, and it sometimes we associate and we're wired to feel that overwhelm being part of productivity. And that doesn't always equal the truth. And so most people I see, especially as a leadership and business coach, are measuring the wrong things. They're tracking hours worked, they're tracking tasks completed instead of revenue generated, client served, systems built. And so when we look at this from the leadership, fulfillment, and growth perspective, is when we take a lens from the growth, is that results come from leverage, not just effort alone. And that's part of that tying in the vision. And so from a leadership perspective, you need to set the standard for what matters. And then from a fulfillment perspective, you feel accomplished when you see real progress, not just exhaustion. And so small intentional actions compound way faster than just that chaotic hustle. So take a second to reflect on that and think back to even your day to day. Where do you feel like you're actually being productive and staying true to the vision of what you're building and scaling versus just that hustle mode of just feeling busy, busy, busy in the day to day? Now, hustle that hustle culture can also destroy your creativity. And what I've seen is that when your brain is constantly in go mode, it really does lose the ability to think creatively. And that creativity, I really believe, just matters so much in business. It's everything from your content to offers, messaging, problem solving, leadership, right? Everything that we do in our business really stems from being able to have that space to be creative. And so when we look at this from a growth lens, innovation drives that expansion. If we don't give ourselves that space to take a step back and think and dream and grow, it really is hard to have that growth go throughout the organization that you're leading. From a leadership lens, creative thinking is what separates, I really believe, good leaders from great ones, is when we can be just that future step ahead. It allows us to lead at such a different level than being in that hustle day to day with the people that we are working alongside. And from fulfillment, creativity is, I believe too, where joy lives, is that this is the reason that I feel why businesses exist, is to create a life that we can live, that we can create by design. And so I've seen that the best ideas don't come when you're grinding. They don't come in the thick of it. They come when you really create that space to allow yourself to reflect and to think about the future of what's working, what's not working, and where you want to grow the business to. Now, I've also seen this one where a lot of people don't talk about this, where hustle culture damages your personal life. And this one can feel heavy because we don't want to talk about it. We don't talk about it enough. And I've seen this in lots of coaching calls that I've done, where hustle culture doesn't just impact your business. It impacts your relationships, your health, your presence. And so from a fulfillment perspective, what's the point of success if you don't have the time or energy to enjoy it? And from a leadership perspective, your life is your example, right? Your life is the example. And from a growth perspective, is sustainable growth requires sustainability in your own life. And so the most successful people that I've seen aren't the busiest. They're the most intentional. And there's such a difference energetically, from just the health and wealth standpoint of success. Even though people that are living the success in a busy way, they're often not burnt out or overwhelmed because of the intention and the way that they're growing their organization. So what I've seen that actually really works well is, if the answer isn't hustle culture, what is, right? And so here's what I found that works really well is, one, is lead your energy, not just your time. And I've talked about this on other episodes because I see this so much in different coaching sessions that I do day to day, is stop trying to just do more, but start really protecting your energy so that you can perform better. It's so, so key. There's a phenomenal book that talks about going after 10x instead of just 2x. And I remember learning that concept thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds so overwhelming. Why do I want to 10x something, when I'm already stretched for time? And it really just is about going all in on one thing and going really deep and really, really, really being productive and protecting your energy so that we can perform at a higher level. The second thing that I've seen that works really well is focus on high income, high impact activities. So asking yourself on a daily basis, if I only had 2 hours today, what would I do? When we condense our time and our energy into a smaller, limited amount of hours, it really forces the most important things to come to the top. But we can get sidetracked with emails and deleting in our inbox and just going through things that aren't really actually creating a lot of high income or high impact. And what do we do that we can delegate to offset some of that, right? So if we just had the 2 hours, how would we use our time more wisely? The third thing is to build systems early. Systems really create that freedom, and hustle creates dependency. So that's where that idea of really moving the needle forward in one area, going deep, is going to allow you to focus on what do we delegate? Hey, what do we eliminate, right? How do we create a system where the results and the things that need to get done are happening, but we're not just hustling through it to just get it done. And systems are usually one of the best ways to do that. The fourth one is prioritize the thinking time. So again, I've mentioned this already throughout this episode, but your business grows in the moments that you step back, not just when you push forward. And I've also mentioned this on previous podcasts. I struggled with this as an early leader in my early years of being an entrepreneur and a business owner. Is I really was in that hustle grind mode all the time. And I thought that any blank space on my calendar would be a waste. And I almost felt bad or guilty about it. And when I started to give myself sort of blank open spaces throughout the week, I found myself really stepping into being able to plan, vision, being creative, actually being really present, and watched my business grow to the next level. And so prioritizing that thinking time is very, very, very valuable. And the fifth one is to redefine success. And this isn't something I've talked about in a little while, but it was something that really pivoted my growth and success of how I view my day-to-day and what I do and the choices that I make, the clients that I serve, is getting clear on what success means to you. Success to me isn't just working nonstop, being exhausted, sacrificing absolutely everything. I've really grown to the idea that success is aligned growth. It's meaningful impact, and it's a life you actually enjoy living. So we're all entitled to our own definitions of success. But as you are reflecting, especially if you feel like your organization has that culture hustle right now, then you definitely want to make sure that you get aligned on, well, what does success even mean? Because we can really get caught up in what everybody else's definition of success is. And that to me is one of the most foundational places you can start as a leader. So, and this is too why I built the LFG framework, is because the core pillars of leadership, fulfillment, and growth, when those are so aligned, you don't need to have that hustle culture, because the leadership then is more about how you show up, how you think, how you make decisions. The fulfillment is how your life actually feels while you're building success. And growth is focusing on how your business scales in a sustainable way. So you don't need to have hustle culture. You can really create momentum very naturally and still have a very financially successful business. And so if this episode hit for you, if you're realizing that maybe you've been stuck in hustle mode and you're ready to actually build a business that supports your life and doesn't just consume it, I want to invite you into something I'm really excited about that I've had being built out over these last few years, which is the LFG Business Academy on Skool. And it is completely free to join. Inside, you do get tools to build your business the right way, a community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and access to my free mini leadership series. And this is where we take everything that we talked about today and actually put it into action. Because awareness is step one, but execution is where your life changes. So thank you so much for being here, for investing in yourself, and for choosing to grow. Because remember that your dream life doesn't just come from doing more. It comes from leading better, from living fully and growing intentionally. Because your dream life starts with the way that you lead, the way that you live, and the way you grow. I'll see you next time on Your Dream Coach podcast.